everybody, it's Donna. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how I made these Pinwheel Spinner Cards. I made them out of Blackberry Bliss and some of the Peaceful Poppies DSP. We're going to be making this one here today. This is a 5x7 card. The other one was a 5.5 by 5.5 inch square card. I did end up having to make the envelope separately for them. Okay, the stamp set we're using today is the perennial birthday. I used the happy birthday, the big happy birthday on the bigger card, as well as one of the sayings for the inside. I'm also using the painted poppies, just a couple of images off of that. This card though, you can use adapted to almost any stamp set you would like to use, and for any occasion as well. I'm also using the layering squares framelits. I'm using the largest scalloped, the largest square, and then the second smallest one. You can also cut these squares out by hand. You don't need the framelits for that. I'm also using the stitched rectangles, 2 of them, so that they can layer inside of each other for the bigger card. I cut a piece of Whisper White thick. I used thick because the card was bigger. It's actually going to be 7 inches wide by 10 inches long, and then I scored it at 5 for a 5x7 inch card. I stamped the 1 centimeter in the front as well as the little poppy image using Blackberry Bliss. As I said though, you can use almost any stamp set for this. I did some of the work previously just to keep the video a little bit shorter. You're also going to need to cut out 2 pieces of Whisper White. This time I used the regular out of the scalloped. You also need to cut a happy birthday out of the smaller stitched rectangle, and how I did that was I just heat embossed the happy birthday, and then I used the die to cut out around it. And then out of the square die you will need to cut 2 pieces of Blackberry Bliss, as well as the bigger piece from the stitched rectangles, which will mat around the happy birthday. And then using the small square, we're going to cut 4 pieces of DSP from one color of one coordinating pattern, and then another 4 from a different coordinating pattern. Again, you can just cut these out using your paper trimmer if you prefer, or if you don't have the dies. And then I also need a piece to mat the front of the card in Blackberry Bliss. So this is a 5x7 card, and I just made it 4 3/4 by 6 3/4, just down a 1/4 inch. And then I took a piece of DSP from the Peaceful Poppies DSP and did a 1/4 inch even smaller than that. So that would make it 4.5 by 6.5. I'm also just used a little bow from something I had previously and a little brad. I found the smaller brads worked better. And you're going to take the 2 white scallop pieces, and I'm just trying to line it up on my grid mat there so that I can see that where the center will be. And then I'm going to take the other one and glue it on top of it. I'm just putting it kind of in the center because I don't want the glue to squish out anywhere where it doesn't really belong. Okay, so we're just going to put that down kind of kitty corner or opposite to the other point, so we have kind of like 2 squares offset from each other. I'm just using the grid mat to kind of line it up, and then lifting it up kind of lets me see it a little bit better. Then we're simply going to take the 2 Blackberry Bliss squares and apply glue to them as well, all over the back of them, and glue them right on top in the same orientation that the white squares were done. This just allows a little white border and eventually a little Blackberry Bliss border all the way around both pieces. After gluing the 2 pieces down, I realized that I got a little bit of adhesive on the outside where I didn't want it to be, so I'm just going to use my adhesive remover to erase the little spot that was there. And then because we're going over extra cardstock there, my tips weren't quite glued all the way down, so I'm just using my fine liner glue pen to get in there to make sure that they were totally down. Now to get the squares down, to start the squares, I need to make sure that the border is the same. So for me, it was easier for me to place all 4 squares down, doesn't matter in which order, just so that I could see the trim, to make sure the trim was even. And then I'm going to take one of those squares and I'm going to glue it. Now this very first square, you cannot glue the whole thing down. You can only put glue on the right hand side. So I just kind of put it right in the corner on the right hand side there, just to place it down, because the last piece of the pinwheel I actually have to slide underneath there, so I can't have it glued all the way down. I had too much glue on there, so I'm just going off to tap some of it off. I'm using stamp blocks just to hold the other ones in place. You notice how the points will meet in the center. The pattern's not is irrelevant what the pattern is at this point. Okay, I'm just moving those off, and now I'm going to alternate them with the other DSP that I had. Now I can glue the whole thing down, though I don't have to worry about keeping one side open, and I can just match the points up in the center and at the center and at the top, and it should pretty much come all the way around correctly. Again, I had too much glue, I just want to take some of that glue off. And then just fitting it into that corner and then fitting the point down in the center. Now I'm going to take the other color and I'm basically putting it beside the original one. So you can see technically there is a square underneath. And it's just matching up in the point there. And I'm going to do the same thing, alternating it all the way around until you come to the very last one. Now these pinwheel designs are not new. This card design is not new. They've been around for ages and ages. This is just my take on it. Okay, now that we're coming up to the very last one, we're going to still put glue along the whole back, but we're going to have to lift up the very first one and slide it underneath. And once it's in place and glued down, then we can glue down the original very first square that we put down there. Now we can begin to put the card together. We're going to glue the DSP onto the Blackberry Bliss matte piece using some Tombow Mono. And then we're going to take the Happy Birthday sentiment piece and put it down onto its mat as well. Once that's done, we're just going to try to line them up because we have to punch the hole in them. So I just want them lined up perfectly. I'm just grabbing a mouse pad or whatever spongy thing because I'm going to poke through it. If you had a crocodile, the big one, it would go through this a lot easier, or even one of the older ones where it just punches a hole. The actual hole punches are too small to go all the way in. The only thing I had available was my pokey tool. As it's not the best option, but it's what I had to work with, so that's how I did it. I think a crocodile would be better, the big one. The small one that I have wasn't, the neck wasn't long enough to go through. By using the pokey tool, you get a little kind of a rough edge on the outside piece. So what I'm not showing you I'm doing is after I punched it through, I'm actually taking a nail file and just sanding the little pokey parts through because I want everything to move freely. I want the spinner to be able to spin. You don't really need to make it a spinner card. You could just glue it right down on top and not worry about it spinning. But in this case, I wanted it to spin. And because I want every piece to move freely, I just kind of sanded it off with that nail file that you see there. Now I'm just taking my brad. This is just a small brad because again, for the same reason, because I couldn't poke my hole that large. I used the small brad and then I'm going to just poke it through both the spinner part and the card, the matte part. And then once that's together, I'm just going to bend open the brads at the back so it stays in place. But then I want the brad not to turn around with the spinner part. I want the brad to be stationary. So in order to do that, all I did was I took some score tape or some tear tape, and just put it right over top. And I really burnished it well into there, removed that piece, and then I did it again the other way. so it's kind of crossed over because I don't actually want my brad to move. A couple reasons for that. On this one's probably not so important, but on the other card where I'm putting a sentiment on top of the brad, I don't want the sentiment to go around in a circle. Once that's done, I'm just going to take some Tombow Mono liquid adhesive and attach it to the front of my card. And you can see it moves freely, but the brad is staying where it's supposed to be. Now I'm just going to attach the sentiment. You could use Stampin' Dimensionals if you wanted. I chose not to because I was going to put a bow on this anyways. So I'm going to put that there. And then I'm going to attach a bow to the front of the sentiment. This is just something from my, I believe it's Fresh Fig. It's from last year's in color. Obviously it's not available, but it kind of matched nicely with the Blackberry Bliss. So I'm going to use it and attach that to the front. After that, I decided I needed to do something else to this card, and that was to do some stitching all the way around it to make it more look quilted, or faux quilted. So I did all the way around the outside of the spinner, as well as around the sentiment and around the mat on the card base itself. That really finished the card off for me. And there is the finished card. I also made an envelope. I had to make the envelope using I used the Rear Memory Keepers 123 punch board to make the envelope, and it worked fine. And I just stamped the flap of it so it kind of matched. Okay, now I'm going to show you the other card that I made. This one I made smaller. This is a 5-inch card, 5" by 5", and I attached the sentiment right to the spinner part, or to the brad, so that when you spin, the sentiment stays in one place. And I just used some other type of embellishments to decorate it all up. And I did the same stitching. And then I used the same punch board to make another envelope. There's another one I did with Poppy Parade color with I still use the DSP for Peaceful Poppies, but I also used Come Sail Away DSP for to coordinate with it. On both these pieces I did that. I haven't done the actual stitching on these ones though. That one I did with a bigger brad. I just found the brad was too heavy and it wouldn't stay still the way I wanted it to. And then this is my original card that I made. This one is 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches, and I did not use the dies for this. I just used my paper trimmer to cut some paper down to fit inside. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope everybody gives it a chance, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.